You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. From Phoenix, Arizona, I'm Matt Holloway. Oh man, we've got a lot to go over today on the HoloNet Live. Will President Trump terminate DACA? Have they dreamed a little too long? In news this afternoon, a massive military response has been threatened by Secretary of Defense Mattis against North Korea's aggression. Apparently, the North Koreans have successfully tested a hydrogen bomb, according to their sources. Further, we're going to talk about Hurricane Irma, which is picking up strength within the Atlantic Ocean. And we're going to also, if we have a little bit of time, dig into who controls Phoenix City Council meetings. The Phoenix City Council or Antifa? All that more here on the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HoloNet has been approved. Please stand by. You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Today is Sunday, September 3rd in the year of our Lord 2017. From Phoenix, Arizona, I'm Matt Holloway. Whole lot to unpack as we go into this first full week of September. Will we be looking at a military option in North Korea? We're going to go to some quick commentary from Secretary of Defense, former General Mad Dog Mattis. He has some tough talk for the North Korean dictator about a massive military response that is brewing. We're going to go to that audio right now from CNN.
We had a small group national security meeting today with the president and the vice president about the latest provocation on the Korean Peninsula. We have many military options, and the president wanted to be briefed on each one of them. We made clear that we have the ability to defend ourselves and our allies, South Korea and Japan, from any attack, and our commitments among the allies are.
Sorry, some technical difficulties there. We'll go back to the comments from General Mattis in just a moment. But before he was so rudely interrupted by a failure of my internet connection, General Mattis was describing the military options that are available to the president with regard to North Korea. Let me see if I can bring you that audio back now. Yeah, it looks like I'm not going to be able to bring you that. My apologies. But General Mattis went on to explain, our commitment to among our allies is ironclad. Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam or our allies, will be met with a massive military response, a response both effective and overwhelming. Mattis called on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to take heed of the UN Security Council's unanimous position against North Korea's nuclear program, and again stressed
territories, including Guam or our allies, will be met with a massive.
Yeah, appears that audio is still trying to come through. General Mattis continued that President Trump reaffirmed the commitment to defending the U.S. and its allies using the full range of diplomatic, conventional, and nuclear capabilities at our disposal, according to a White House readout of a call between the president and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. So that really does beg the question, are we looking at a military intervention with North Korea in the upcoming weeks, months, or years? Is this going to be the defining conflict of the Trump presidency? A lot of our sources say yes, that we are looking at, in one form or another, the next stage, the next evolution of this conflict. It's been a quiet war for over 50 years. Many people don't know North and South Korea have been in a constant state of war since the armistice was signed following the Korean War almost 60 years ago. There never was a formalized peace treaty, so a state of war in a legal and diplomatic context has continued to exist. We've merely been in a lull. What we don't want, what I don't think anyone wants, is a true shooting war with North Korea, because the casualties will be beyond anything that the American people have seen in the last, well, honestly, in the last 2 generations. We're talking about a war of our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers. Stephen Airy Jr., one of our producers and co-hosts over at Defenders of American Exceptionalism, piped in, saying, as long as it is a defensive strike and not a preemptive strike, we will forego having to also fight China. Now, this is true. China has come out from the outset and stated that as long as the United States is acting in defensive capacity, they will not intervene. And so far, this is proven out. Economically, China has put enormous pressure on the Hermit Kingdom and on the Kim Jong-un regime. And at this point, I believe that the biggest choking opportunity that China has is to continue to refuse coal shipments from that nation, which is rapidly developing a famine situation. They've had one of their worst crops in 50 years. So this is when push is really going to come to shove. Is the Kim Jong-un regime going to continue to defy the world at the expense of their own people? Or are they finally going to heed the words of reason coming from General Mattis and from President Trump's administration and stand down? If they do, there may be a new opportunity for peace that we haven't seen yet. If they don't, then there's a virtual certainty that we may see war in our life. And it will be a war that the American people are purely unprepared for at this time. Now, if you've at all listened to the Glenn Beck program on The Blaze, there have been a lot of great stories and a lot of great routines that have been gone through by that show. One particular was by Jason Buttrill. Jason Buttrill is a military expert who works for The Blaze. He's a lead researcher there, and he actually led out with the fact that North Korea has artillery pieces that are positioned which can level Seoul within a matter of hours. And we're talking about upwards of 4 million people dead within a day. And the modus operandi of North Korea is to threaten warfare and destruction when they're backed into a wall, when they're facing starvation and economic consequences. And that's what we're seeing here today. So is the so-called Trump doctrine succeeding? Only time will tell. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back from that break, we're going to start talking about dreaming the impossible dream and the consequences of that dream. We're talking about DACA, deferred arrests for children of illegal immigrants. Will President Donald Trump finally fulfill his campaign promise and put an end to DACA? We'll be back on the HoloNet here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
Patriotic people of this country, a responsibility and a duty greater than that of any since the Civil War.
It is the common people of the world that are interested in this business. They know when we have war, it is they that have to bear the burden. It's their sisters and mothers and daughters that have to wait, trembling, to hear the news.
We are called as a people to give testimony in the sight of the world to our faith, that the future shall belong to the free. Since this century's beginning, a time of tempest has seemed to come upon the continents of the earth.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Oh, and we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Matt Holloway. Man, I'm telling you, if Dylan and Steven are listening, or anybody else over at Lanterns.buzz, if I'm going to keep this live crap going, I've got to get a producer. I'm telling you, keeping track of everything, it's a job. I mean, wow. I'm used to just doing kind of the podcast where I can, futz around, do what I want, pull up all this audio, and it works, and I get to cut it, and I get to go into post-production and fix everything that is screwed up, but you can't really do that in real time. At all. You got to kind of just vamp it and hope it goes well. Now I kind of know what Chris Merrill feels like when, I've visited his show a couple of times and heard him complain about, my laptop just crapped out, My internet connection just went, that's a technical term. So Yeah, Dylan. Steven, I know that's what you do for Dylan. Anyway, so I might need to actually find somebody local to Arizona who can actually help me out with that. So, might start taking applications soon or something. But before we move on and we hit this DACA struggle, DACA, I want to make sure that we address the latest nuclear test to come out of North Korea. Was it or was it not a hydrogen bomb? Now, Chris Enlow, who I refer to frequently, he's awesome. He writes for The Blaze. He actually put together a quick what you need to know. If you want to check that out, that's at theblaze.com. Did North Korea just drop a hydrogen bomb? Here's what you need to know. North Korea taunted the world on Saturday with claims they had developed a new nuclear weapon. Dictator Kim Jong-un claimed his military could make the bomb in high volumes. The Korean Central News Agency even released a picture showing Jong-un inspecting the bomb with his military advisors. Now, this is like the same photo that I've seen 17 times of Kim Jong-un kind of pointing out into the distance like this and looking at whatever he and his advisors are looking at. He's just kind of doing this. And you can't see it, but I'm making a funny face for the people on Facebook Live. But it's just him looking kind of pudgy and looks like one of his generals trying not to laugh. It's kind of sad there. But we have to realize that what we're looking at here coming out of North Korea needs to be taken seriously to a certain extent. I know nobody can see me on the radio, Stephen. Thank you. What we're looking at here, it's propaganda. So we have to take some value from it. We have to take some cues from it. But we also have to come to the realization that we're dealing with propaganda. This is Pravda. Do you take it seriously in one respect? Yes. But do you live in fear because of it? No. The Soviet Union claimed they did a lot of things that they didn't do. Claimed a lot of accomplishments that they didn't actually make. Hell, the Germans did that in World War II. We did that, and so did the English. Quick thing here. Have you ever heard the concept that if you eat a bunch of carrots, you'll get really good eyesight? A lot of people have. A lot of people my age have. And it's kind of funny that is complete and total bollocks. It is a fantasy. It is propaganda that was created by the English during World War II to try to explain to the Nazi spies, the German spies amongst them, how their spotters could continually pick up the Luftwaffe in the skies above England. Because they didn't want the Germans to figure out that they developed radar. I mean, think about that. So they put out this propaganda telling their people and their soldiers to eat a lot of carrots because that will improve your night sight. Not only did the Germans believe it, but subsequent generations here in the United States and around the world still do. Now, I'm sure the vitamins and minerals contained in carrots do have some benefits toward eyesight, and maybe keratin does have a benefit there. But it doesn't give you like night vision like in Call of Duty, where the world turns green and you can plot a plane right out of the sky and aim an anti-aircraft turret at it. That was radar. But that's the value of good propaganda. And that's what I think we're looking at here from North Korea. Did they let off a nuclear bomb? Well, the 5.6 earthquake that seemed to originate out of nowhere in North Korea indicates to me that they probably blew something up. Do they currently have a hydrogen bomb that they can fit into a nose cone of a rocket and hurl across the Pacific Ocean at targets here in the United States? Not so sure. Just not so sure. I'm not going to sit here in Phoenix and live in fear that North Korean missiles are going to rain from the sky. I just can't do it. My parents grew up that way with duck and cover, and you hide under your desk, and there's this little animated turtle that tells you you're going to be okay. You know what hiding under a desk does? Desks are made of wood, and an atomic fireball, that equals kindling. If anything, cook you slightly faster. So maybe it has that aspect to it. But I'm not going to live in terror, and I'm not going to have my children live in terror, because then that pudgy little jokester from North Korea, who likes to point off into the distance and look challenging, then he wins. And you know what? I'm just more than happy to sit back here while he's behind the DMZ, trying to convince his people that half a pound of rice is just as good as a pound of rice. I'm going to sit here and drink my coffee through my custom-made Cafe Press HoloNet coffee mug. No, that's not pumpkin spice, but the time of pumpkin spice is upon us. My wife actually posted that up yesterday, that she had her first pumpkin spice, so it is officially fall, even though it's not fall for another 20 or so days, and we live in Arizona, where it's 105 freaking degrees in September. So fall, my hiney. Anywho, on to bigger and better things. Back to DACA. Hey, DACA. So, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, better known as DACA. President Trump is expected to end it this coming Tuesday. How about that? The day after Labor Day, President gets back in the White House and says, well, time to get rid of DACA. Time to fulfill that promise to the American people, and fulfill that promise more specifically to African Americans. Seriously. If you check out Lanterns.buzz, it's a fantastic story. It said, Mr. President, keep your promise to black Americans on DACA. Did everybody forget that? Seriously. The president made a campaign promise specifically to black America that he would end DACA. Why? Because DACA creates a negative workforce environment for African Americans. Think of it. Are African Americans, specifically African American youth, being negatively impacted by the DREAM Act? Why, yes. Bob Bennett on Lanterns.buzz posted on 9/1. A Wall Street Journal article on August 25th discusses the people who were brought to the U.S. by their illegal alien parents, called by some dreamers, though they are just as illegal as their parents. Now, June 2012, President Obama rewrote the Immigration and Naturalization Act by presidential fiat and gave them legal status under DACA, which allows them to stay here and work in the United States. According to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, 1,267,834 applications have been accepted through June 30, 2016. So that is 1,267,834 people who have effectively sidestepped the immigration process here in the United States. And I'm going to use a phrase that I'm not allowed to. I could get in big trouble for this. They're called anchor babies. That's right, anchor babies. That's when you come into the United States and you have a baby, and the baby is an American citizen by virtue of their birth. And as a result, the parent gets to stay here. Oh, I'm going to get in so much trouble for that. Twitter's going to light me on fire. Dreamers and anchor babies, not entirely the same thing. Dreamers were brought to the United States as children. Yeah, Steven says I'm fired. Dreamers were brought to the United States as children. So they did not have an active choice in the matter. They are illegal aliens nonetheless. However, if they stay here and they have children, those children would subsequently be, the bad word, anchor babies. Those children will be American citizens by virtue of their birth. And as a result, it will be much more difficult for immigration courts and immigration authorities to remove them from the United States, because you don't want to break up a family. You don't want to snatch the parents away from a 2-year-old. I've got 2 1-year-olds. It's not a good idea. Excuse me, still fighting some allergies here. During the campaign, Mr. Trump repeatedly promised end DACA on day 1 of his term. We are well past day 1. Wall Street Journal pointed out that candidate Trump called DACA an unconstitutional executive amnesty, But after he took office, he softened his stance and allowed the program to continue, with his administration approving applications and renewals. President Trump said, DACA is a very, very difficult subject for me, he said during a news conference in February. It's one of the most difficult subjects I have because you have these incredible kids. Now, 11 states have given the Department of Justice until September 5th. So that's 2 days from now, folks, 48 hours. They've given until September 5th to start enforcing the law against the beneficiaries of Obama's illegal amnesty, or they will add DACA to their already successful suit against the Obama government regarding DAPA. That's Obama's second amnesty of the 4 million parents who are themselves illegal aliens but have children who are citizens or lawful permanent residents. DAPA, D-A-P-A, was determined by the courts to be illegal, the Fifth Circuit Court upholding the lower court's decision, noting the establishment of DAPA was beyond the president's powers. SCOTUS was split on it. That's the Supreme Court decision was split, so the Fifth Circuit decision stands. If you want to go into a little bit deeper on this, check out Bob Bennett's article. It's on lanterns.buzz. I'll make sure I include a link on social media. He gives a fantastic rundown here, but I want to get really to the heart and soul of this issue. Is there any point where it is acceptable to walk away from the meaning of the law, the spirit and color of the law, in order to exact a humanitarian solution? So let's think about this. You have a whole family who comes into the United States illegally. It wasn't the decision of the children. The children don't have a vote. It was the decision of the parents. So the children at this stage are victims. Now, when the child turns 18 in the United States and does not have citizenship in the United States, the child here is still a victim, but also has a choice to make. They can either continue to live in the United States illegally, or they can seek remedy. Now, seeking remedy would involve talking to the Department of State, talking to the immigration authorities to try to right the situation and become a legal citizen or a legal resident of the United States. Or they can stand in front of the Capitol in Phoenix, Arizona with a sign and protest. Now, many of the people who are protesting are in the process of going through the correct motions to become citizens. And I applaud that, and I realize it takes time. But we do have to openly acknowledge that a person who knowingly and willfully stays in a country illegally is in fact engaging in a criminal activity. Because they do have that choice to go back to their appropriate country of citizenship and from there attempt to become an American citizen. So that's where I stand. If you're making every effort to become an American citizen and you successfully become an American citizen, I welcome you with open arms as a brother or a sister. However, if you believe because of the actions of your parents you should gain citizenship free and clear because it wasn't your fault. A lot of things happen to us because of things we cannot control. Every day. Things happen that aren't our fault. But we have to live with those consequences, don't we? We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what illegality really means, illegal citizenship really means. And we're also going to talk about the latest threat to the United States in the form of Hurricane Irma. Will it or won't it hit the east coast of the United States, or, God forbid, the already battered Gulf states? You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. From Phoenix, I'm Matt Holloway. We'll be right back.
McDonald, it's true. Has it happened to you? 'Cause it starts with a dime and it ends with a dollar. Makes me wanna get up and to holler, hey! Well, has it happened to you? 'Cause it's happening all around and no one's making a sound about it. We gotta take back America, 1, 2, 3. Take back America, you and me. Take back America or we're all screwed.
Here at the New Conservative Resistance, we understand if you don't get enough of the HoloNet. So, we've made it easy for you. To find the latest on Matt Holloway, whether it be blogs or radio podcasts, go to theholonet.com or holonet.lanterns.buzz.
Starts with some action, ends up in rubble. I think we could be in for a whole lot of trouble. Hey! Well, has it happened to you? Because it's happening all around and no one's making a sound. No one's making a sound. No one's making a sound.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Oh man, we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. Once again, I'm Matt Holloway. Now, we were talking a little bit about DACA and DAPA and more or less illegal immigration into the United States of America. And this is a really touchy topic, especially where I live in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, where if the heat doesn't kill you, potentially scorpions and other wildlife that like to sting you and kill you will. Now, I want to define for everybody what an illegal immigrant is. And let's go to our old friend Google. An illegal immigrant defined by dictionary.com, a foreigner who enters the U.S. without an entry or immigrant visa, especially a person who crosses the border by avoiding inspection or overstays the period of time allowed as a visitor, tourist, or business person. Compare resident alien, expand, also called an illegal alien. So, the definition of an illegal alien or an illegal immigrant is someone who is in the United States without an entry or immigrant visa, crossing the border, avoiding an inspection, or overstays the period allowed by their legal documentation. So, what that means is illegal immigrants are criminals. By definition. They've committed a crime. Well, that goes completely against everything that the Obama administration told us, and everything that the mainstream media is attempting to lead us to believe. Apparently, I thought these were just, the greatest people in the whole world. And, to be perfectly honest, they could be good people. I know some people who have paperwork issues, and for one reason or another, their immigration status is gray right now, and it's not right where it should be. Doesn't necessarily make them bad people. What makes you someone who is committing a crime is if you knowingly and willfully abuse the system to stay in the United States when you have no legal right to do so. You did not immigrate here. You did not follow the appropriate processes. You don't have a worker's visa. You have no legal qualification to live in this country. Nancy Pelosi on August 25th said POTUS's pardon of fellow birther Arpaio makes a mockery of rule of law and says communities of color can be targeted and abused with total impunity. Excuse me. I talked about this on last week's live show, and this has been one of the longest running strings that I've ever seen on Twitter. I've never gotten a response like this at all on anything I've ever done. This has gotten 2,883 impressions and 137 engagements from people because all I said is, sorry ma'am, illegal immigrants do not qualify as a community of color. They do, however, qualify as criminals by definition. These are facts. Because if I, as a native-born American, born here in New Jersey in 1986, if I were to go to another country and avoid intentionally their immigration process and stay there willfully, knowing that I have no legal right to be there, I would be engaging in a criminal act and would entirely expect to be treated as such. Where did we go wrong in this country calling crime crime? When did we stop doing that? It's an interesting concept how we've softened the definition. First they were illegal aliens, but illegal aliens sounds mean. So then they became illegal immigrants. Because, they're immigrants, just like our grandfathers and grandmothers were, and our generations past were immigrants into this country. But they did it illegally. They ran afoul of the system. Then they became undocumented immigrants. Like their paperwork just got lost in the mail. And now today, even saying somebody is an undocumented immigrant seems offensive. So I think we need to go back to the root definition here. If you are here in the United States and you have no legal qualification to be so, and are willfully continuing to do so, you are committing a crime, ergo you are a criminal. And that's the bones of it. People get their feelings hurt by things that are often true, because it's very, very difficult to grip the mirror and acknowledge that, yes, your presence here is criminal. I think we have to get back to that. Get back to truth in language and stop softening our language and softening our speech in order to make people feel better about things they shouldn't feel better about. Sorry, I'm not going to change my pattern of speech and my veracity of speech to make you feel better about the immoral act that you've committed. I'm finished dancing that dance. Now, Stephen asks, wouldn't that be a felon? I actually have to check. I'm not sure that, being here illegally qualifies as a felony. It may simply be a misdemeanor, but it is a federal offense. So I'll put it that way. It is a federal offense. Now, I just got a news flash here, came in from the Associated Press, that Caribbean islands are preparing for Hurricane Irma. That's right, Hurricane Irma has now hit Category 3 and is trending towards San Juan, Puerto Rico. And preparations are being made now in the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, which are the easternmost possession of the United States. They are a territorial possession dating back to their purchase from the Netherlands, if my history is correct. So Hurricane Irma, which formed last week as a tropical storm, is now a Category 3 hurricane and seems to have its eye set on the U.S. Virgin Islands, although its path is still uncertain. Going to an article from USA Today, Hurricane Irma regained strength Sunday to a Category 3 storm with winds at 115 miles per hour and an unpredictable path that might strike the United States next week anywhere between Florida and Nova Scotia. A sharper image of the hurricane's track should come into focus by Tuesday, said meteorologist Philip Klotzbach with Colorado State University. The storm could also turn back out to sea without hitting the U.S. mainland. But does anybody really think that's going to happen? That doesn't really seem to be the way our luck's playing out. USA Today goes on to say, while Texas and Louisiana dry out from Tropical Storm Harvey's devastating rainfall, the nation is on high alert, but needs to be patient. He suggests that residents of the eastern seaboard refresh preparedness kits and keep a close watch on the forecasts. Subtle shifts in the path now can make big changes as to where it goes next, Klotzbach said. Follow your local emergency managers and start thinking about what you do if there's an order to evacuate or shelter in place. So HoloNet listeners on the East Coast, take heed. Make sure you do not get caught unprepared should Hurricane Irma decide to strike. Now, I say decide as if it's a human being. No, these things are forces of nature. But if the storm does strike, then we want to make sure that we've done the most to prepare to either shelter in place or to evacuate. I myself have family in Virginia, New Jersey, Florida, all places where the storm could theoretically strike. I even have family in North Carolina as well. So I'm going to be staying tuned on this, sticking around and watching for it. I know Steve is letting him know there are 3 paths currently that are the most accepted. One, I believe, is coming across... Yeah, there are 3 main tracks. The one main track crosses the U.S. Virgin Islands, strikes Puerto Rico through Hispaniola and into Cuba, possibly striking Florida. The second main track targets the Carolinas up into Virginia, potentially as far in as New Jersey. And then we have a third path which leads off the coast, headed toward Nova Scotia and potentially Newfoundland and Canada. So make sure you stay tuned to this one, folks. Hurricane season is upon us. We've had a 12-year break, but they're back now. And I think Hurricane Harvey, as terrible as it has been, and as the devastation continues to unfold in Texas, was simply the opening round of the 2017 hurricane season. Now we're going to take one more final break, and then we're going to launch into what to expect this week as we decide if we're going to keep DACA, as we learn more about the North Korean situation and as it evolves, and as Hurricane Irma sizes up the East Coast for projected landfall late next week. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, I wanted to let you know this week we actually have a very special guest who has returned to the United States. Jonathan Dunn is currently touring the U.S. on a speaking tour. If you're at all interested in listening to him, you can check him out on freedomsdisciple.com. Again, that's www.freedomsdisciple.com. You can also listen to his show on theblaze.com. But I am very, very excited that he is actually now touring through the United States, and he has recently done several speaking engagements in the Carolinas.
The Blaze Radio Network.
If you have the chance, it's not something that you want to miss. It's actually going to be a very, very interesting tour, as Jonathan is going to be speaking in Alabama. We'll also be in Texas and Oklahoma over the course of the next couple of days. And John always brings a rather inspirational message that America is great because America is good, and that we are an exceptional nation. If you haven't had a chance to give a listen, check out the Defenders of American Exceptionalism podcast, which aired last night. He spent about 2.5 hours or 2 1/3 hours with Dylan Lyles and Stephen Airy, and it was a great time had by all. So again, check out Jonathan Dunn. He's on freedomsdisciple.com. You can actually find him on Twitter at IrishJohn. Oh, sorry, that's at freedomsdisciple. And you can also find him online Facebook. That's Freedom's Disciple or Jonathan Dunn on Facebook. So be sure to check that out. And if you're anywhere near one of his speaking events, make sure you give a listen. For Jonathan Dunn, Freedom's Disciple, formerly of Lanterns.buzz, still with the Blaze podcasts.
Listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. From Phoenix, this is Matt Holloway. Now, in the week coming up, we have a lot that is coming. We have Hurricane Irma, which is bound to make landfall here in the United States. The North Korean story continues to unfold. We actually have, Governor Jerry Brown declaring a state of emergency in Los Angeles County as fire continues to rage in the Verdugo Mountains near Los Angeles. Interestingly, the German city of Frankfurt has evacuated 60,000 people to defuse a World War II bomb that was located during construction efforts in Frankfurt, as happens from time to time. And now a funding battle is looming as hurricane damage in Texas from Harvey tops $180 billion, according to Reuters. This is something I'm going to be watching very closely, and we may dive into deeper detail on next week's show. Will we see another battle in Congress for funding for Hurricane Harvey victims, the same as we saw post-Hurricane Sandy? And what is that going to look like, especially when the most staunch opposition to the Hurricane Sandy relief bill came from Texas senators like Ted Cruz and Texas congressmen? Now, let's not mischaracterize things. The opposition to this bill was not because of relief for New Jersey, but because of the hitherto untold amounts of pork that were forced into this bill by senators the likes of Senator John McCain and Senator Jeff Flake. Pork spending, sweetheart spending for their constituents back home, being front-loaded into a bill for the relief of hurricane victims. It's happened before, folks. It's going to happen again. I promise you, it will happen again. And Ted Cruz will be painted as a hypocrite. Every senator and every congressman who opposes this will be painted as a hypocrite. Why? Because it's absolutely impossible for our Congress to pass a clean bill for anything. They can't pass a clean budget. They can't pass a clean relief act. No. Everybody has to get their little rider, their little addenda put in that looks good for their constituents. Every single time, without fail. And you know, if you gotta pick a hill to die on, this isn't a bad one. Demand from Congress a clean relief bill for Hurricane Harvey that leaves all the pork spending at home and makes sure that Texas gets the help that they need, like should have happened to New Jersey and Hurricane Sandy. When Chris Christie gave that great big old hug to President Barack Obama, it's such a shame that in the moments that should bring us together, that in the moments should bring the simplicity and clarity of purpose to Congress that have been lacking. These are the moments where our division is the most pronounced. These are the moments. These are the moments when we see how ill, how sick the patient truly is, and how broken our system is. Demand from your Congress a clean relief bill for Hurricane Harvey. No sweetheart deals, no pork belly spending. Just get these people the help that they need. Do what the government is chartered to do under the Constitution, which is to preserve, protect, and defend the American freedoms and provide for the common good. Not sneak a bridge or a dam or a solar project in there as long as you can get the tax write-off. So that's what to look for next week. While they're up behind the podiums talking about relief for the victims of Harvey, watch the other hand. Because it's going to sweep in and just put a little note at the bottom. It says, money for this, money for that. And puts a gun to the head of Texans who are in need of help today. Holds them hostage for whatever price the butcher requires. With that, we're going to bring this podcast to a close. With, again, our thoughts and prayers going out to the people of Houston, Galveston, Katy, Beaumont, and everywhere else affected by Hurricane Harvey. May the survivors find comfort and solace. May those that have been lost rest easy in the hands of God. From Phoenix, Arizona, you're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, where we hold the line against the night and we shine the light of truth on the battlefield of ideas here at the Lanterns Media Network. Thank you for listening and watching. Good night. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.